After losing a battle with his party, our hero was trapped in the void for many decades. Because of that, he went mad with revenge. After a long time, a mysterious creature appeared and tore through space and time, allowing him to escape. But when he returned to reality, he found himself in another world. There, he realized he had lost his powers, but he possessed a secret passive skill. A completely overpowered passive that, if used correctly, makes him invincible. This story is amazing. Leave a like on the video and subscribe. We're aiming for 20,000 subscribers, and I'm counting on your support. The story begins with a beautiful woman shouting for our protagonist named Derek to get ready, warning that the portal opens in 30 seconds. But Derek takes a sip from a mug without worrying, saying that he already got the message. Then he stands up with a confident look, remembering that he has already saved her team before. His arm is covered by lightning, and he says that it's just about entering, saving, and getting back for dinner. Annoyed by his attitude, Sylvie jokingly calls him an idiot and keeps focusing on maintaining the portal. Then she yells that it's time since the portal has finally opened completely. Derek is already in his full armor, announcing that now is the time for action. Without hesitation, the warrior walks determinedly and enters the purple vortex of energy. The scene shifts to a setting of destruction, with people fallen and a lot of blood on the ground. With his face all bruised, he wonders how things reached that point. Devastated, Derek helps a comrade as they are surrounded by monsters while trying to save an ally. Then days, years, or decades pass with him floating alone in the darkness of the void. Now older, he remembers that tragic day which repeats endlessly in his mind. He thinks it was supposed to be a simple mission since he had already mastered the system on his own. In his memory, an ally shouts for him to run to the portal, saying that Sylvie won't be able to hold on. Another memory shows the team arguing since there was no time to save the others. With an expression of pain, he regrets thinking he could save everyone at that moment. At that moment, he ran toward the closing portal, shouting that he could still save his friend. He calls himself an idiot, thinking how his stubbornness led to that tragic situation. The final memory shows him carrying a friend, telling him to keep walking toward the portal. He calls himself a liar, remembering the moment when a monster attacked him from behind. In his memory, Sylvie despairs upon seeing the portal about to close completely. Regretful, he asks why he tried to help, begging the portal to hold on a little longer. In the past, he was running with everything he had, shouting for the portal not to dare close in his face. Then he throws himself forward and stretches out his arm, desperately trying to reach the other side. But suddenly the portal closes on his arm, breaking everything with a crack. The young Derek is in shock, not understanding what had just happened there. His body is overtaken by purple energy as he tries to process the situation. Back in the present, he wakes from the nightmare with a gasp, completely disoriented. He falls to his knees in the void, wondering what he did to deserve such a fate. He questions whether it was because he wasn't strong enough, or maybe someone betrayed him. But he grabs his weapon, trying to believe that Sylvie and the others will come to rescue him soon. Then he waits in the void, counting the days until someone comes to find him. Without knowing how much time has passed, he trained with his weapon, meditated, and strengthened his body. He meditated, practiced, and trained, all in the hope of one day being able to see the sun again. Suddenly, a notification sound echoes through the void, and he looks up without understanding anything. An error screen warns that the system has detected him moving out of control range. Then several error alarms go off, and he panics, asking to wait. The system warns that the connection is being lost and tells him to return to the safe area. Desperate, he shouts that it's all he has left, but the connection to the system is lost. In despair, he cries and begs for them not to take away his system, his only hope. With a scream of anger, he punches the void, trying to break the invisible barrier of the place. He feels trapped since not even his high vitality saves him from the agony of regenerating. He thinks that no matter how strong he becomes, the cracks in his sanity only grow wider. With no more strength to fight, he finally gives up everything and asks to die in peace. He feels that he is losing himself again, slowly sinking into the darkness of that place. But then a rift appears in the void like a call, and he decides to answer this chance. A sound of something breaking echoes through the place, and he turns to look at the crack. He thinks he's seeing things, but his eyes shine as he realizes it's an opportunity. With a clenched fist, he notices that the rift isn't closing, it's a real exit. Surrounded by energy, he shouts that he's finally getting out of that place no matter what. He laughs without caring where he's going, gathering power to break the barrier completely. But something strange passes through the rift, leaving him confused, not understanding what it was. Suddenly, a gigantic explosion happens, sending everything flying with full force. He is thrown backward, realizing that it was strong enough to break his prison. Then the creature that invaded the space lets out a deafening roar, revealing its presence. A dragon's head emerges, and he jokes that that's not the right way to greet someone. The monster growls at him, but Derek offers to teach the creature some good manners. With a smile, he says that he's curious to see his strength now that he no longer has the system. Without wasting time, he charges forward with his weapon in hand, attacking the beast. The creature retaliates immediately, firing an energy beam straight from its mouth. The explosion is gigantic, and Derek tries to defend himself from the attack with his own weapon. He manages to dodge a few blows but realizes he won't escape the next attack. Then he is hit directly by the explosion and thrown far by the impact. Lying on the ground, he stares at the monster and calls it an ugly bastard, still recovering. He grumbles in pain, realizing that the wound proves it's not a hallucination. Seeing his bleeding hand, he smiles and confirms that now he's 100% sure. With a clear mind, he says that it's been a long time since he last bled and that death is a good escape. The creature doesn't wait and begins to prepare a new magic attack in front of him. But Derek stomps firmly on the ground, getting ready to strike back with everything he's got. He narrates that after decades trapped, he finally found a chance to fight his way out. The creature doesn't like the idea and lets out a furious roar, preparing for the attack. Even losing his sanity, he dodges the energy beam with a quick spin of his weapon. Almost losing the will to live, he says that he managed to surpass all his limits. With a look full of hatred, he shouts that the monster has the choice to kill him now, or else he tells the creature to get out of his way so he can finally escape. The warrior then unleashes a massive attack that destroys the entire scenery around him. Using the floating rocks, he leaps skillfully to get closer to the monster, and with a victorious look, he prepares the final strike, declaring that he's finally out. With a laugh of relief, he passes through the portal and manages to see the sun once again. The warrior shouts, celebrating his freedom, but the scene rewinds a little to show something else. Before that, a boy was running breathlessly through the forest, wondering if he had escaped the danger. He runs desperately among the trees, thinking he should never have strayed from his village. To make things worse, the boy trips and ends up falling off a cliff, cursing his bad luck. He manages to reach the top of a mountain but runs out of breath when he sees he's stranded. Then a giant wolf appears behind him and the boy already thinks his end has come. The ground starts trembling and breaking, making the boy scream while trying to hold on. The beast charges at him and the boy can only scream for help while falling to certain death, either by the wolf or the fall. But to his surprise, the boy realizes he's still alive and becomes confused when he sees a strange light in the sky. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning crashes down from the sky, exploding in the water right in front of him. A warrior in armor lands right in front of the boy, who gets startled by the arrival. The boy panics, saying that he barely escaped a wolf and now thinks he's seen a demon. Suddenly, an error appears in the warrior's vision, warning that the system will eliminate the threat. Then, a purple energy blast throws him far away, with him not understanding what's going on. The energy causes a massive explosion, and the boy watches the scene completely shocked. The warrior ends up falling apparently unconscious in the middle of a clearing, vulnerable on the ground. Meanwhile, the wounded wolf stands up, facing the situation with a deadly stare. The beast then climbs onto a rock, watching the fallen warrior and waiting for the right moment. Derek remembers being trapped for a long time, reduced to fragments in the void. In his mind, he wonders if everything he lived through had really vanished. He wonders if his life, his system, and his home were real or just a dream. Then the wolf takes advantage of him being on the ground and bites the protagonist's leg hard, but he just grumbles, asking for 5 more minutes, leaving the beast confused by the reaction. Derek starts laughing, saying that the wolf's bite is tickling him. Annoyed by the mockery, the wolf shows its teeth and growls with even more rage. He then opens his eyes and shouts to stop, punching the creature squarely. The boy sees the scene and confirms that he's a demon while the man catches his breath. Suddenly, he picks up the wolf in his arms, treating the beast like a puppy, even growling. The warrior is impressed by the creature's attitude and smiles. Derek looks around, finally noticing what kind of place he had ended up in. He finds the decay beautiful and noisy, asking his new puppy to be quiet. The guy must be really messed up in the head to think that about a monster. Seeing the whole scene, he finally understands that none of it had been a dream. He becomes confused when he sees that his system is back, but it's different, and without his achievements. The status screen shows that he's level 0, but his attributes remain quite high. With his weapon in hand, he hopes that his skills are still with him. He tries to use the energy/ability, but nothing happens with his weapon. With an embarrassed look, he doesn't understand what happened while the wolf stares at him. He gets irritated and tries to use the ability several times, but none of them work. The warrior remembers the system error, wondering why the abilities won't activate. With the wolf chewing on his arm, he theorizes that his old system has merged with a new one. He wonders how he ended up in that place and where exactly he is now. He hears a branch breaking and becomes alert, asking who else is there with him. It's the boy, who kneels and begs not to be eaten, saying he just wants to go home. The warrior becomes confused, asking what the boy is talking about since he's not going to eat him. The boy asks if he isn't a man-eating demon, leaving Derek speechless. Derek becomes outraged and asks what about him looks like a man-eating demon. With that face, even a demon would be scared. The wolf then barks at the boy, who gets frightened and screams, falling backward in fear. Derek scolds the wolf, which makes the boy even more confused about the situation. He apologizes and asks the boy's name, introducing himself as Derek. The boy replies that he's Thomas and says he's still level 0 since he hasn't turned 13 yet. Derek is surprised, and the boy explains that one can only use the system at 13 and must kill a creature to unlock it. Beside the protagonist, the wolf gets nervous while Derek processes the idea of having to kill a creature to use the system. The atmosphere becomes quite awkward, with the wolf sweating bullets, already imagining what's going to happen as the two stare at each other comically. Then, without warning, Derek snaps the beast's neck with his bare hands in a quick motion. The boy is shocked, but Derek tells him that it wasn't a pet. He explains that if it really were level 0, the wolf would have finished him off long ago. Then the system congratulates him for the kill, and he levels up several times at once, but he notices there are more notifications, one of them warning about a threat suppression. He understands that the new system couldn't eliminate the old one, confirming his suspicion. With a victorious smile, he concludes that his old system didn't disappear. Now he has 2. Suddenly the boy's stomach growls loudly, leaving him deeply embarrassed. Derek asks if he's hungry, and the boy admits he's starving. Without ceremony, they light a campfire and start roasting the wolf's meat to eat. He offers some water to the boy, who thanks him and drinks it all at once. Derek warns him to take it easy, and the boy realizes he overdid it, feeling embarrassed. The protagonist then thinks that now he just needs to figure out how to access his original system again. Then he gets the idea to buy meditation in the new system to see what happens. Suddenly his body is engulfed by lightning, and the system warns that a dormant skill has been found. The fusion completes successfully, and he recovers from the pain, feeling as if everything is burning. Then the system reports that meditation has evolved, and he wonders if he still has his old skills. He understands that they merge with the new ones, and smiles, realizing he'll be stronger than before. A short time later, the boy asks if it's a good idea to cut his hair while walking through the forest. But Derek reassures him, saying that the mana machine does all the work by itself. He then brings up their deal, saying he'll only take him home if he tells him about the place. The boy agrees and begins explaining that everything there is ruled by the great system. He says his grandfather believes the system is fair, and that everyone should be grateful for it. But the truth is that the system isn't fair at all, since the nobles have advantages. They use their power to keep everyone else down, as if they were chained. To make things worse, they cheat the system to gain benefits and widen the power gap. With hatred in his eyes, the boy says that because of the noble's cruelty, his parents, Derek then tells him to be careful with his hair, and Thomas quickly begs him not to kill him. But Derek tells him to relax, joking that he won't kill him before seeing how bad it looks. With the haircut done, he congratulates the boy for surviving, and the boy thanks the system. This already confirms that in this world, the system is treated like a deity. The scene shifts to the next day, and Derek wakes Tommy, who was sleeping heavily. The boy wakes up a bit dazed, and Derek asks which way to his village. He says he's from Raina village, and Derek suddenly gets a frightened look. Then the boy runs off, shouting the name of someone called Mr. Jones, leaving Derek behind. But he stops at the door of a house, shocked to see a trail of blood on the ground. Inside, he finds Mr. Jones lying lifeless in a pool of blood. The boy freezes in fear, and Derek approaches, placing a hand on his shoulder. He asks if that was his grandfather, but the boy says it was just a kind old man. Desperate, he shouts that this couldn't have happened, since the man was almost level 30. Derek looks confused, asking if level 30 is supposed to be considered strong. Outraged, the boy yells that at that level, nothing in the forest could even scratch him. But Derek crosses his arms and reveals that the wolf he killed was level 53. The image shows the moment he snapped the beast's neck, proving what he said. The boy doesn't believe it, saying it's impossible, and that Derek must be lying. Then he panics, shouting that they need to go back and warn Chief Raina right now. Meanwhile, Derek thinks that maybe the boy doesn't even have a home left to return to safely. The scene shifts to the forest, where a mysterious green orb glows and emits a strange sound. Then a wolf similar to the one Derek killed slowly approaches the orb, drawn by its power. The beast gets closer, sniffing the energy emanating from the mysterious object on the ground. Suddenly the wolf growls, and its eyes shine as it's possessed by a malevolent force. A giant and terrifying spirit materializes suddenly in front of the wolf. The skeletal creature crushes the wolf to the ground, making the surrounding trees tremble. The bone monster reveals its full form, with an empty gaze and green flames in its eyes. The scene cuts to Raina village, which seems peaceful and quiet under the morning sun. There, a woman asks if her daughter can carry a heavy sack she dropped. The girl answers that she can, since she unlocked the great system and can now help her mother. She says that makes her strong, but the mother notices her daughter trembling with effort. The mother says that if the girl asks nicely, her father will give her some leather. Excited, the girl says that way she can improve her leather crafting skill. The mother smiles and says he might even let her help skin the hunted animal. But the girl becomes horrified at the idea, repeating the word skin in disgust. With a panicked expression, she asks if she really has to skin the animal. The scene then goes back to 2 weeks earlier, with her father taking her to unlock the system. He shows her a level 10 monster, a special gift for her ceremony. It was a cute level 10 fox that looked completely harmless and calm. Traumatized, the girl cries, remembering the dead animal, regretting having spent her skill point. The mother tries to comfort her, saying she'll get used to it, but regrets the creature being so cute. Suddenly, the sound of an explosion interrupts their conversation, scaring both of them. The mother screams for her husband, who appears injured, and tells her to take their daughter to the east gate. She runs with the girl and asks what's going on, and he warns that they're strong beasts. Then the girl calls for her father, who tells her to just obey her mother at that moment. With a spear in hand, the man insists that his wife flee with their daughter immediately. Then he says goodbye, telling them he loves them and asking them to stay safe. From afar, Raina village is seen completely in flames, a scene of destruction. The girl asks if her father will be okay, and the mother assures her that he and the chief are strong. With a forced smile, the mother runs, saying she knows he'll make it back to them. The scene shifts to a group of knights, and the leader announces that Raina village is 1 day away. The leader smiles confidently, saying that if they move quickly, they'll arrive before nightfall. The girl and her mother from before are among the group. They hug as the leader continues, telling everyone not to panic. But suddenly a giant paw slams onto the ground, and the knight turns in shock. A huge beast roars in his face, paralyzing him with fear. The monster then attacks mercilessly, and the man can only scream for everyone to run. The knight's body falls in front of them, leaving the girl in shock. The creature stares at the survivors, its face covered in blood and eyes full of malice. Then the wolf stands up and faces the girl's mother, who calls out to her in fear. Calling the girl Brandy, the mother orders her to run, but the girl refuses to leave her behind. Seeing the monster leap to attack, the mother shouts again for her daughter to run now. The girl watches in horror as the beast charges toward them. With her spear, the mother blocks the wolf's attack, using all her strength not to give in, but other wolves knock her down, and she thinks she just needs to hold on so Brandy can escape. Fallen and wounded, she accepts death as long as her daughter can reach safety. With tears in her eyes, she gets up and runs with all the determination she has left, but in her rush she ends up bumping straight into someone in armor, without seeing who it was. Lying on the ground, she hears a voice asking if they'd like some help, by any chance. Outraged, Thomas kicks Derek and yells if he's blind and can't see what's happening. Brandy, watching everything, starts crying and begs for help, completely desperate. Then Thomas runs to hug her, asking if she's okay since they saw the smoke. Brandy begs them not to let her mother die, and Derek agrees while activating a skill. Without hesitation, he releases energy that slices the wolf in half with a single strike. The girl's mother is covered in blood and completely in shock, not understanding what just happened. Derek faces the remaining wolves and says the experience from killing them would be good for the others. Outraged, the woman shouts that she doesn't care about the experience, and tells him to finish the beasts. With a smile on his face, Derek cracks his neck and says this is going to be fun. The three wolves waste no time and charge at him with everything they've got. With a cold look, he grabs one of the beast's paws from the ground. Then he throws it far with incredible force, causing a small explosion when it hits one of the wolves directly. Derek moves with agility, dodging and striking the monsters at high speed. With his fists covered in energy, he finishes the beasts with precise and brutal blows. His eyes shine with power, showing that he didn't even have to try hard to fight. Amid the bodies, he complains that he was wrong, and that it wasn't fun at all. With a bored look, he grumbles that those wolves were far too weak for him. Relieved, Brandy runs to hug her mother, crying and shouting in happiness. The girl weeps, worried about her father, but the mother tries to calm her, saying that he's strong. But she thinks her husband isn't as strong as Derek, and that no one in the village compares to him. She thanks him for saving them but asks who he is, since no one there is that powerful. He says he's just escorting the boy to the village, and invites them to come along, teasing Thomas. Thomas tries to argue, wanting him to check the village, but Derek cuts him off, saying the deal was only to take him home. He keeps walking and explains that, from what they saw in the forest, the village must already be destroyed. The woman looks confused and asks what he means, questioning if the Gracefalls sent him. With a face showing he didn't understand any of that, Derek simply replies that they didn't. But Thomas insists, pulling him and saying they need to go because there might still be people alive. Derek interrupts him, saying me, leaving Thomas completely confused by his answer. He looks at the boy and says that it'll be him who fights, not us, leaving the boy speechless. Then he reminds him that the contract was only to take him home in exchange for information, nothing more. He explains that he's only alive because he relies on himself, since he never puts his faith in others. With a serious look, he says that the most important thing is not to stray from the path to be a hero. He recalls that every disaster in his life happened because he got involved where he wasn't called. Outraged, Thomas shouts that it doesn't matter because now he's strong and should help. But Derek mocks him, saying he talks exactly like a 12-year-old boy. The boy hits him, yelling that nothing there can hurt him, and that he doesn't need anyone. Crying in anger, he screams that Derek is just being a huge jerk to them. And to everyone's surprise, Derek simply agrees with the boy's statement. He explains that he is a jerk in a world where jerks live and heroes die, advising the boy. Derek then grabs his arm, telling him to be a jerk and get strong before becoming a hero. He explains that this is the only way to survive in a cruel world like that, but he thinks that this lesson is so deeply rooted in him that sometimes he forgets he can break it. The boy gets scared and asks what he's doing, but Derek responds with another question. With a serious look, he warns that they're going to save what's left of that village. The scene cuts to the boy panting, now alone in the middle of the destruction and flames. Suddenly, a giant and deformed monster roars and charges toward the two of them, but Derek readies his weapon, staring down the beast that roars back at him. Then, with a massive energy strike, he slices the creature in half with a single blow. The two of them then walk in silence through the ruined village, surrounded by fire and devastation. Thomas thinks that Derek already knew it would be like this, and brought him to face reality. Derek then asks if he understands, explaining that this is what happens when one isn't strong. The boy realizes that this wasn't a rescue mission, but one to recover bodies. Suddenly, Thomas stops him, and Derek asks if he saw another beast nearby. A groan of pain comes from under the rubble, and Derek tells the boy to just wait a moment. From beneath the debris, Chief Leon rises, and Thomas shouts his name in shock. Without thinking, the boy runs toward him, but Derek yells for him to come back immediately. The chief asks what he's doing there, and Thomas says they came to help. Then he sees a body on the ground and realizes it's Brandy's father, becoming completely devastated. Derek tells him that the man fought bravely but, unfortunately, won't survive. The scene shows the man impaled, and Derek adds that, in truth, no one there will. He asks if there isn't a healer, but the chief says no good one would ever come to a village. He thinks about his resurrection potion in his bracelet, but decides he can't use it now. He reminds himself that he's not a hero and can't be led by the boy's blind heroism. Thomas cries as he sees Brandy's father, and Derek thinks there's still something he can do. He then says he'll be right back, giving them some time to say their goodbyes to the man. Desperate, the girl's mother cries while Brandy begs her father not to die, but with his last strength, the father tells her to be strong for her mother and that he loves her. Then his hand falls lifeless, and the man finally dies in his family's arms. The girl screams that she doesn't want him to go while her mother silently cries beside her. After the farewell, Derek says the place isn't safe and they need to keep moving. Seeing Thomas sad, he says he knows it's hard but the boy will get used to it. But Chief Leon gets angry and glares at him, asking who he thinks he is to say that. He says he knows Derek isn't from there and demands to know why he should let Thomas go with him. Thomas interrupts the argument, saying Derek was right about what he said earlier. With a sad look, he says he already lost before when his parents didn't come home. He feels envious because at least Brandy got to say goodbye to her father. With everyone gathered, they leave the village and Derek decides to check the system notifications. Then a blue screen opens in front of him, showing all the new information. The system notifies that he killed several monsters and can now choose a new class, but he's shocked by the options as they're far more insane than he expected. The first class is Shadow Fighter, which allows control over darkness. The second is Blade of Chaos, which turns him into the personification of destruction. The third is Eternal Guardian, and he wonders how he's supposed to choose between them. But suddenly his eyes widen as he realizes there's one more option there. He starts trembling and sweating cold, wondering what that new class was. The screen shows the Void Champion class, saying he's been chosen by the Void itself. A dark armor appears in his mind, and he realizes that's the power of the Void. He remembers the vastness and hunger of that place, which are now part of him forever. He recalls that the Void wasn't a teacher or ally, but a brutal and merciless master. Feeling as if the ground beneath his feet is dissolving, Derek admits that the Void had completely defeated him. He was broken and consumed, but the Void offered him something no one else could. And what it offered was control, so Derek accepts becoming the Void's champion. Now he and the Void were the same, and his body shines with a purple energy. Back in the present, the power bursts out, and Leon yells for Thomas to get away from Derek. Leon pulls the boy back and Thomas screams in confusion, not understanding what's happening. Then the system announces he has learned new skills, and he decides to test them right now. He begins gathering a sphere of purple energy, preparing for the attack. The chief thinks the energy has stopped, but Derek is only preparing to use the Call of the Void. A beam of purple energy shoots out with full force, and Leon thanks the great system for saving them. With a wicked smile, Derek finds this new power absolutely incredible. The energy beam hits the distant forest, causing a massive explosion. The chief and Thomas stare in disbelief, calling his name in shock. Far away, Brandy asks what's happening, but her mother doesn't know how to respond. The energy beam splits apart, and Derek looks up, wondering what that was. A creature from the void appears with a roar, and he wonders if it's a void beast. He stands there speechless at the sight, finding it unbelievable to witness. Terrified, Leon asks Thomas where he found a guy like that. Far away, Brandy asks again what's going on, but her mother still can't explain. With an excited smile, Derek realizes he now has his own summon. The void beast is fully manifested, towering gigantically in front of everyone. He asks what he should call it, and suggests Asher, with the creature growling in response. Derek notes that the beast is smaller than the other one, but says he can work with that. Chief Leon panics at his smile, asking if Derek is insane, but Thomas says he's not, though he's also stunned. The boy explains that he thinks Derek can control the monster, while Derek orders the creature to sit. When the monster doesn't obey at first, Derek commands it again to sit, but it attacks. The impact sends Derek flying several meters, raising debris and dust. Thomas screams Derek's name, but Leon holds him back, ordering him to stay behind. Suddenly, a glowing hand smashes the ground with force. Wearing his new armor, Derek warns that Asher shouldn't have done that, because now he'll have to kill him. With his face wounded, he turns to the two and orders them to get out of there right now. He activates his energy blade, saying he doesn't want anyone getting in his way. The warrior tries to use the identification skill, but the system warns that the creature isn't from this world. He remembers he barely managed to scratch the other monster and prepares for a tough fight. Knowing there's no room for mistakes, he leaps forward with all his strength toward the void beast. The creature tries to bite Derek, who approaches with a look full of determination, but the beast blocks his attack with just its arm, leaving him surprised by its strength. Then the monster counters with a powerful strike, and he braces for the impact. The blow is so strong that it throws him far, flying from the force of the hit. On the ground, he can't believe it, and wonders how the creature could be that fast. The beast teleports and attacks again, but he dodges at the last second. But the monster fires another beam and hits him directly, making him scream in pain. Defeated, he thinks that if he pretends to be dead, maybe the creature will tire out and leave him alone. But the beast doesn't fall for it, and charges a massive attack to finish him once and for all. The creature smashes him repeatedly, but he refuses to accept that this is happening. With his health at 20%, he activates meditation to try to recover. Even while healing, he knows he must get that monster off him as fast as possible. He stands up and rushes forward with his weapon in hand, trying a direct strike at the creature, but the beast is faster and manages to grab his blade with one of its hands. Then the creature strikes him with full force, and his health bar keeps dropping rapidly. His health plummets as the creature beats him mercilessly, leaving him more wounded with every hit. From afar, Thomas cries and prays for Derek to survive this fight. The creature then charges a dark energy attack, making Derek worried. He realizes he's taking too much damage, and that even meditation won't be enough to heal him. His health keeps dropping drastically, showing the creature's overwhelming power. Lying on the ground, he thinks he needs something to strike back before it's too late. With his face covered in blood, he finds a skill and spends his point on heavy weapon mastery. The system then warns it will merge the skills, and he screams from the pain of the process. The fusion completes successfully, and his new ability instantly reaches level 20. With the fully upgraded skill, a bluish energy bursts violently from the ground. Now stronger, he charges at the beast without hesitation. Wrapped in energy, he leaps with a determined look, ready to end the fight. He tries to break through the monster's defense, asking for just a bit more strength, but he realizes he can't cut through, as the void is nullifying all his attacks. He then decides it's time to fight fire with fire, using his new ability. With his hands, he begins channeling void energy, preparing for the strike. With a shout, he releases the power, and the creature's armor starts to crack from the impact. The attack intensifies and creates an energy vortex, destroying everything around. Finally, he lands on the ground, exhausted and injured but victorious after the battle. With a smile, he says the fight was fun, and the system rewards him with an achievement. Then several notifications appear, announcing that his abilities have leveled up. The scene shifts to an elegant place, and a servant informs his mistress that she'll want to see this. The report confirms a void beast, and the woman finds the news quite interesting. With a cold look, the hooded woman orders that a hunter be sent to the location. The scene returns to the survivors, and a woman spots the group, recognizing who's arriving. Chief Leon finally returns with the others, and the people celebrate that he's back. The villagers surround the chief, asking if everyone is safe and where the others are, but the chief is speechless, unable to tell his people the terrible news. With pain and anger in his eyes, he clenches his teeth, remembering everything that happened. Then a man says there's nothing left to return to, leaving everyone in shock. Devastated, he says he failed as a leader and should have died along with the others. Suddenly, Thomas shouts when he sees Derek, who mocks the boy for thinking he'd die. Embarrassed, the boy denies it and says he's just glad Derek came back safe and sound. Then Derek approaches the two women, and with seriousness, says he's sorry for their loss. He reveals that he stored the woman's husband's body in his bracelet, so they can hold a funeral once they're safe. The woman is shocked and asks if he really did that for them, unable to believe his kindness. Gratefully, she thanks him for the gesture, and Derek simply nods in response. The scene shifts to nighttime, showing the survivors' improvised camp under the moonlight. Chief Leon tells everyone to stay close to the fire, but one of the men says nowhere is safe now. Alone near the flames, Chief Leon stares into the fire, lost in his dark thoughts. Nearby, Thomas takes the chance to ask Derek what happened to the void beast. With disdain, Derek says it wasn't a big deal since the beast ran off once it realized it couldn't hurt him. But Thomas doesn't believe him, saying his grandmother told stories about them, and they wouldn't leave that easily. Remembering how that thing opened a hole in the sky and came through it. Brandy's mother agrees with Thomas, saying she's never seen anyone summon a void beast, but Derek brushes it off, saying he just got lucky. He swears he won't use that skill again, and even as Thomas insists, Derek says legends are overrated. The next morning, Brandy's mother wakes everyone, yelling that they need to move if they want to reach Raina before sunset. As they walk along the road, Derek feels someone tugging on his arm and turns to see what it is. It's Brandy, who asks if she can keep some of the animals, leaving Derek confused by her request. She then explains that she means the animals stored in his bracelet since she overheard their talk last night. Seeing no problem, he agrees and takes a dead creature from his inventory that looks like a rabbit. He hands it to her, warning that the others are big and he'll give them later, and the girl thanks him. Derek asks why she wanted it, and Brandy just hugs the creature with a sad look. The scene shows a flashback of her father pointing to a cute animal she had to kill to awaken her power. Crying, the girl reveals that she used her point on crafting because she wants to make armor to protect the village. She remembers her father smiling and says she just doesn't want anyone else to get hurt. Derek watches her silently, wondering how someone fixes what's already broken. Then he says he has more animals and can give them all to her, thinking maybe he doesn't have to do everything alone. The scene shifts to a gate where a guard complains that he doesn't care about their story. He faces the survivors and warns that he can't let them in without identification since he doesn't make the rules. Outraged, Brandy's mother gets angry and yells for him to go find this so-called Raina, but the guard mocks her, saying he won't abandon his post and that this is turning out to be quite entertaining. Seeing the scene, Derek demands that Chief Leon take action, reminding him he's supposed to be the leader there. With a lost look, Leon wonders if he can still be called a chief now that he's failed his people. Brandy's mother remains in front of the gate, explaining that the group has lost absolutely everything. But the guard refuses with a smirk, saying it's a decree and that they're not allowed to enter. Then Derek steps forward and asks who would stop him if he decided to break that rule right now. Brandy's mother is startled by his attitude, wondering if he's crazy for wanting to kill the guard. The guard then provokes Derek, saying that teaching them a lesson would make his day worth it, but the woman holds Derek back, warning that killing a noble would only make things worse for everyone. Disappointed, the guard mutters that it's a shame she has at least a shred of common sense. Suddenly the gates begin to open, and the guard turns confused about what's happening. Out come Wallace Gracefall, a nobleman, and Raina, the leader of that village, with an imposing presence. Raina asks what they're doing there since a hunter reported seeing smoke in the direction of the village. Upon hearing about the tragedy, she expresses her condolences and invites everyone in, saying they'll always have a place there. Then she turns to the nobleman and orders him to keep his men under control because the people are under her protection. The woman thanks her, and Raina tells her not to worry, saying they'll talk more comfortably at her home. Raina warns her to be careful, as a different kind of beast has been roaming near those walls. Outraged, the noble shouts at Raina, asking if she's forgotten her place in his authority. Unfazed, Raina tells him to leave, reminding him that his place is in Torith, not here. Furious, he threatens to crush them all like insects, but she provokes him, asking if he wants to disgrace his family even more. Hearing that, the nobleman backs off, and Derek thinks that his contract with Thomas is finally over. But he decides to stay, thinking it's better to learn about this world here than to wander the forest alone. Raina then turns to him and invites him in, saying that Leon's friends are welcome. Derek hesitates for a moment at the invitation, but stammers and agrees to enter the village with them. As he walks past her, the warrior releases a strange aura that puts the village leader on alert. She looks at him suspiciously, wondering what kind of dark power he possesses. The scene shifts to Thomas's grandparents, with his grandmother complaining that Raina is taking too long. The grandfather tries to calm her, but she yells that she can't relax with her grandson missing. The door opens, and Raina walks in, and the grandmother immediately demands to know what took her so long. But she's stunned when she sees Thomas running and shouting for his grandparents, tears in his eyes. The grandmother hugs him tightly, unable to speak and crying in relief. With the family reunited, the grandfather says they missed him dearly, hugging the boy strongly. Raina enters with the others and asks Thomas's grandmother if that was important enough for her. Derek watches the scene with a smile, seeing the boy's relief at being with his family again. Raina asks everyone to sit down as Thomas's grandmother hugs him, making him embarrassed. With everyone at the table, she says they have very important matters to discuss at that moment. She then addresses Derek, saying she's been told he was the one who saved Thomas and the refugees. With respect, the village leader says that for that act, they will be forever grateful to him. Beside them, the grandfather ruffles Thomas's hair, and the boy complains, embarrassed by the old man's gesture. Derek says it was nothing, and asks her to just call him by his name, but she remains serious. She warns that if he expects payment, unfortunately, there's nothing she can offer. The leader explains that the village's resources are already stretched to the limit, and can't cover any extra costs. The scene cuts to an arrogant noble ordering a gardener to bring him a drink in exchange for a coin. Derek then asks with a smirk if she was talking about payment, catching her off guard, but he explains that Thomas already paid him with help, and the boy agrees immediately. Then he changes the subject, saying their real problem now is the nearby forest. Surprised, Raina leans forward and asks if he knows what's happening there. Looking at the map on the table, Derek tells everyone he has an idea to solve it. He explains that if it's like in his world, it can only be a dungeon break. Then he begins to explain that dungeons are the lifeblood of any system. They are sources of power, treasures, and of course deadly dangers for those who dare to enter. Each one is a world of its own, made to test and reward the brave who step inside. But when a dungeon is neglected, chaos takes over, and the monsters escape into the world. Its power then infects the land around it, corrupting everything with its dark energy. Raina expresses doubt, saying they would know if there were a dungeon, but he asks if a new one couldn't have just formed. Thomas's grandfather agrees that it's rare but not impossible for a dungeon to emerge in the middle of the forest. With sweat on his face, the old man realizes that this theory would explain everything that happened to the village. Raina asks if he thinks Derek is right, and the old man confirms it's the only thing that makes sense. Then she asks where Derek said he came from. Derek stands up, saying he never mentioned where he came from, and that now that they know the problem, they need to find a solution. He suggests that maybe the nobles outside can handle it. After all, that's what they're there for. But Raina yells for him to wait, making Derek stop with a displeased look. She admits that he's strong and that they have no way to pay him, but still, she has to ask. With a hand on her chest, the village leader humbly asks if he could help them. Derek sighs and refuses the request without thinking twice, ready to leave the room. But before that, he calls Thomas to walk with him, leaving the boy surprised by the invitation. He says he needs to find the little girl to give her more animal hides, and the two leave through the door together. Back at the table, Thomas's grandfather tells Raina that Derek is right about what he said. She agrees but complains that he didn't need to be so blunt and that they need a plan quickly. Then Raina turns to Chief Leon, saying that he was the one who spent the most time with the man. She asks his opinion about Derek now that he's not there anymore. The chief hesitates, describing him as a sarcastic, bad-tempered guy who asks basic questions. Curious, Raina leans forward and asks what else he noticed about the mysterious warrior. With a tense look, Leon reveals the most frightening part, warning that he can summon the void. Meanwhile, Derek and Thomas walk through the village, calmly looking for Brandy. He complains that the place isn't that big and asks where she could have gone, but Thomas doesn't know. Suddenly, a scream catches Derek's attention and he stops, looking toward an alley. There, a female guard tries to take Brandy's animal hide, saying that a peasant would just ruin the item. With a victorious smile, she yanks the hide away and mocks her, saying that wasn't so hard. The girl screams for her to give it back, but the guard taunts her, saying that Noble Wallace just needs an excuse to start a fight with Chief Leon. But when she turns around, she bumps into Derek and angrily yells at him to watch where he's going. With a deadly look, Derek orders the woman to drop the hide, releasing an aura that terrifies her. The scene shifts, showing a sword being driven into the ground, making it clear that a fight is about to start. Noble Wallace becomes furious, shouting that he demands justice because a commoner dared touch his guard. With rage in his eyes, he orders Raina to get out of his way, threatening that heads will roll. But she stands in front of him, shouting that she won't allow a fight inside her village walls. Raina thinks Derek barely arrived and is already causing the biggest mess with the nobles. She concludes that Leon was right about Derek, while Thomas comforts Brandy, who has recovered the hide. Ignoring Raina's warning, the noble draws his weapon and advances, determined to fight. Without hesitation, Derek throws the guard at the noble's feet, saying he can keep her. He then announces to everyone that he was already leaving the village anyway, surprising the group. Thomas is shocked by the news, trying to remind Derek of what he said earlier. But Derek smiles and tells him not to worry, he'll be back, and tells the boy to keep training. Then he hands the mana trimmer to the boy, asking him to practice while he's away. He walks off and gives one last warning, not to unlock the system until he returns, and Thomas agrees. But Wallace, eager for a beating, interrupts again, calling his name and saying he's a lucky man. Suddenly time seems to stop as Derek, in a cold voice, says he'll interrupt him before he digs his own grave. He gives a simple warning so that an idiot like Wallace can understand that if the noble touches anyone in the village again, he'll kill him, finishing the threat and leaving Wallace terrified. His presence fills everyone with dread, and Raina and the others feel the dark aura emanating from him. Surrounded by purple energy, Derek turns to leave, radiating pure terror as he walks away. Still shaken, Wallace orders one of his guards to follow Derek, and the man obeys immediately. Alone in the forest, he remembers what Thomas said about gaining an achievement for killing a strong monster. He knows he needs to go deeper into the forest, but doesn't realize the guard is following him with a bow and arrow. The guard takes aim at Derek, saying he won't even know what hit him as he releases the arrow toward the protagonist. With his status screen open, Derek calculates that he needs a level 112 monster. His stats are high, and he decides it's time to distribute the 40 points he still has. At that moment, he sees the arrow approaching and thinks that the guy finally decided to make a move. Easily dodging the attack, he thinks it's about time since the man had been following him for an hour. Meanwhile, he continues allocating his points. Then he unlocks 2 new achievements, gaining more status points and 2 free skills, leaving him pleased. Seeing what just happened, the guard is in shock since he never misses a shot, wondering how Derek managed to dodge it. He convinces himself that the target didn't even notice, and prepares to shoot again with all his strength. The arrow flies at high speed, aiming straight at the middle of the protagonist's back, but Derek stops the attack with his hands without even turning to look at the archer. With a look of pure boredom, he warns that he was in the middle of an important skill choice. The guard panics and starts stuttering, unable to believe what he just saw. Without thinking twice, he turns and runs off at full speed, screaming that he's not staying there. He jumps between the trees, wondering what kind of monster that man was and whether he managed to lose him. But Derek appears in front of him, wondering which skill to choose, and the guard screams in terror. Sitting on a branch, Derek just watches as the man runs away again. He then jumps down from the tree and follows the guard, who shouts for him to stay away while Derek still wonders which skill is the better choice. Desperate, the guard tries to escape again and climbs onto a tree branch to flee from the imminent danger. From the top of the tree, the guard jumps and shouts the name of his skill, preparing an all-out attack. Several energy arrows fly toward Derek, who mocks him for shouting the attack's name. The arrows then explode violently, destroying the entire tree with a massive impact. Exhausted, the guard looks at the dust and wonders if he finally managed to hit his target. But Derek appears right behind him and says it was close, leaving the guard in shock. He explains that he's already chosen his skill and strikes the guard in the neck, knocking him out instantly. Back at the camp, the noble shouts when he sees his guard Geoffrey returning completely battered, making it clear that Derek had some fun with him. The noble asks if he managed to kill the target, but the trembling guard denies it. Badly injured, he admits that he couldn't even scratch Derek, leaving the noble stunned. Angry, Wallace orders his men to pack up, announcing that they're heading back to Torith immediately. One of the guards looks confused and asks if they're running away from the fight that was about to start. But with a serious expression, Wallace denies it and says they're only going to gather reinforcements before returning. Walking through the forest, Derek begins using his identification skill on everything he sees. He points at trees and rocks, and with that, his ability finally levels up. Suddenly, he finds a horned rabbit, and the system reports that the creature is level 54. He crouches down and talks to the creature, asking what it's doing alone in the forest. With a smile, he finds the rabbit cute and thinks maybe he won't kill it because of that. But out of nowhere, the creature charges at him, trying to pierce him with its horn. Derek barely dodges, and the rabbit flies past him with the attack. With an angry look, the creature lands on a log, leaving Derek confused. Annoyed, he yells at the rabbit, which retaliates by leaping ferociously at him. The creature lands on the ground, snorting and glaring at Derek with pure rage. With a grin, Derek accepts the challenge and asks if the little bunny really wants to fight him. Then he snaps his fingers and gets ready, warning that now the real fight will begin. The rabbit doesn't wait and dashes toward him at full speed, but Derek dodges all the attacks easily and manages to grab the creature mid-air. Holding the struggling creature, he calls it a little demon, surprised by the rabbit's bravery. The rabbit bites Derek's hand, but the damage is so low that he starts laughing at the situation. But he realizes that while the damage is small for him, it would be fatal for someone like Thomas. Holding the creature firmly, he decides to just set it down and walk away. He bids farewell to the psychotic rabbit, saying its level isn't worth killing for. The rabbit glares at him in pure hatred, snorting as Derek walks away from the spot. Alone, he opens the skill screen and wonders which restorative ability he should choose. The system gives him only 3 options, and he complains that it's a stingy system when it comes to choices. The first is Poison Cure, which he dismisses immediately, and the second is Lifesteal. The third is Rejuvenation, a healing ability focused on a single target, and he finds the idea interesting. He thinks that Lifesteal would heal him more, but Rejuvenation could be used on others. Without much thought, he taps the screen and successfully learns the Rejuvenation skill. With a smile, he thinks it's good to have the ability in case he needs to heal someone in the future, but he sighs, wondering why he even left the village for a stupid system achievement. He regrets running off into the forest after being alone for so long and questions if he's okay, but he convinces himself that he caused trouble and almost killed them, so it's better this way. Suddenly, something hits him hard, making him twist in pain from the impact. He turns and yells in confusion, realizing it's the same rabbit from before. Annoyed, he asks if the creature is following him, and is shocked when the rabbit charges again. Suddenly, a wounded wolf emerges from the bushes, and the rabbit charges at the threat with a deadly glare. The creature attacks the wolf mercilessly, leaving Derek shocked since he thought rabbits were herbivores. Seeing the rabbit covered in blood, he concludes that the creature is not only a psychopath but also an idiot. Out of patience, he decides to let the rabbit tag along but warns it not to get in his way. The two then travel together and even camp, with Derek roasting food over the fire. The rabbit proves to be a good hunter, and Derek pets it, noticing that it seems to like it. They even sleep together, showing that they're forming a bond of companionship. The next morning, Derek stretches and calls the murderous rabbit to continue the journey, but he notices that the creature has stopped following him and turns around, confused to see what happened. Derek realizes they've reached a dark area filled with twisted roots and bones scattered on the ground. He understands that this is the rabbit's limit, as it stomps its paw, confirming its decision. Saying goodbye, he tells it not to wish him luck because nothing out there stands a chance against it. He keeps walking, thinking that sooner or later the farewell was bound to happen anyway. With sorrow and sadness on his face, he tries to calm himself as the loneliness starts weighing on him again. In his mind, he remembers the void and says he's only alone because it wants him to be that way. The warrior then faces the darkness, reaffirming that this solitude is his own choice. Suddenly, he spots the green orb and uses his identification skill on it. The system reports that it's the immortal dungeon, level 100, and he walks toward it. He says that inside he'd find a high-level monster for the achievement, but there's no way he's going in there. Derek steps back, afraid of being trapped again and deciding the risk isn't worth it. He decides it's better to head back since the nobles have probably already left the village. With a sigh, he turns and mutters that the whole journey was a waste. But out of nowhere, a skeletal monster bursts from the ground, attacking him with energy claws. The system identifies it as an acid ghoul, level 115. And Derek smiles at the news. He grabs his weapon, saying he's been saving up all this frustration and now needs a target. With blue energy flowing, he shouts that it's time to let it out on someone, and charges forward. In one swift move, he cuts off the creature's arm before it can even react. He mocks it, asking if that's all because he expected much more from a level 100 monster, but the creature regenerates instantly and grabs him, closing its fist tightly around him. A red aura surrounds them both as Derek struggles to break free. When he finally manages to escape, he slides across the ground and admits the thing is a bit stronger than he thought. But with a grin, he gets ready again, thinking that now the fight will be more fun. The monster spits a jet of acid, and Derek tries to block the attack with his arm. Even after being hit, he recovers and retaliates with his own bluish energy. His weapon flies like a missile and explodes against the monster, which screams in pain from the impact. The creature charges again, and Derek yells that it's too weak to be level 115. But the monster's acid hits him directly, burning his skin and clothes instantly. Furious, he raises his weapon against the monster and asks if that's the strength of this system. With a wicked grin, he tells the creature not to make him laugh as he unleashes his dark energy. He releases a pillar of purple power that tears through the ground straight toward the creature. The energy explodes violently, and Derek braces himself to avoid being blown away by the blast. With victory, he levels up several times and unlocks an achievement for killing a powerful creature. The area is left in ruins, and he grumbles at the pools of acid left behind from the fight. He realizes the acid destroyed his armor and decides to store it in his bracelet for now. His shirt is also torn, and he laments not having any more clothes from Earth to wear. He pulls out a simple tunic, thinking he really didn't want to have to wear one of those. The scene shifts to 2 weeks later, and a voice asks if Thomas is almost done. Thomas replies that he's nearly finished, completing the haircut with the mana trimmer. He shows the result to his client, who looks in the mirror to see how the cut turned out. The man loves it, and Thomas says that if anyone else needs a cut, they can come to him. Brandy sighs, and Thomas jokes that if she wants, he can cut her hair too. But she glares at him with a deadly look, telling him not to even think about touching her hair. Scared, Thomas gives up immediately, saying fine, he won't offer again. She goes back to her work, and Thomas asks worriedly if everything's okay with her. She says yes, but that she's done everything she could with the hides Derek gave her. She complains that she needs more hides, and Thomas sighs, wishing Derek would return soon. Then she remembers that his grandfather caught a frog for him to unlock his system. He confirms but says he refused because the frog was too weak and Derek told him to wait. The two look out toward the horizon, with Thomas confident that Derek will find something better for him. The scene shifts to Leon's destroyed village, where a hooded figure arrives at the site. The cloaked person runs a hand through the void's lingering energy, sensing the traces of the beast. With his fist clenched, he realizes someone killed the creature and that there's another energy present. The hooded figure touches the ground and senses that the energy trail leads somewhere. He concludes that the trail goes toward another village and runs in that direction. The scene shifts back to Derek, who laments how the monster's acid ruined his armor. He thinks that cleaning the dungeon would be a pain, but suddenly he's surprised by something. It's the rabbit, waiting for him in the middle of the path, just standing there silently. He wonders if it did that because it likes him or because it wants to kill him, and the rabbit charges at him with full force. Then Derek catches the rabbit and warns it that he promised to bring someone a strong monster. With a threatening smile, he says the rabbit is the perfect candidate if it doesn't behave. He explains that the creature can stay in the forest but cannot come to the village with him. Pointing a finger at the rabbit's face, he asks if it understands what he's saying. Out of patience, he sighs and puts the rabbit on the ground, giving up on arguing with it. He tells it to follow him and decides it's time to give his companion a proper name. The warrior asks if it likes the idea, and the rabbit seems to agree, hopping around. By the campfire, he suggests names like Snowball or maybe Bella while the creature sleeps. But suddenly blood splatters on him, and he realizes those names don't fit the beast at all. He watches the psychotic rabbit devouring a dead bear, wondering what kind of name would suit it. Thinking out loud, he says the creature is insane and tries several names, but none sound right. Then suddenly he gets an idea and smiles, believing he's found the perfect name for the creature. With a solemn air, he kneels and declares that the rabbit once known as Idiot will now be called Sylvie, and the two continue their journey through the forest together. A week passes, and the two finally reach the village entrance, ready to part ways for a while. Derek grabs a small creature and tells Sylvie that this is where their paths separate for now. With a smile, he explains that he can't take her into the village because she'd cause a massacre. He then asks her to wait in the forest, promising to return in a few days to get her. If she's still there, he jokes that maybe they can travel together again with their new friend. He wipes his face with the small creature, admitting that despite everything, he'll miss her. But suddenly the rabbit headbutts him hard, forcing Derek to dodge the hit. Annoyed, he yells for her to stay in the forest while the system identifies the creature as a level 50 squirrel. At the wall, he waves to a guard above, catching the man's attention. The guard asks who he is, and Derek introduces himself, saying he's finally back. He tells him not to worry about the gate and crouches to build momentum. With a jump, he leaps over the wall and the guard nearly slips in shock. He lands safely, grabs the guard, and compliments his new haircut. The guard thanks him awkwardly while Derek calmly jumps down to the other side of the wall. Inside the village, he shouts for Thomas, letting everyone know he's back. Thomas hears the call and starts running, almost knocking over a villager along the way. Excited, he keeps running through the village, leaving Brandy and the others behind. The two arrive talking at the same time, saying they've been training and leveling their skills. Brandy asks for more hides and a knife, while Thomas asks about the monster Derek promised him. Overwhelmed, Derek stands there stunned, not sure what to answer. Thomas shouts that he wants to be strong like him, and Brandy pushes him aside to talk too. Out of patience, Derek sighs and shuts both their mouths, complaining that they talk too much. He then makes a deal with Brandy, promising to help her if she reaches level 10 in crafting. Then he turns to Thomas, saying he brought him a present in his backpack, where a poor squirrel struggles to escape its prison. He tells the boy to meet him at the gate so they can finally unlock his system. He asks if they both agree, and they cheer excitedly at the idea, but he warns that he'll only give them the gifts if they answer whether the village has a tavern. Arriving at the bar, he opens the door and takes a deep breath, saying he missed that smell. He walks through the place hoping the beer on this planet is at least decent. Suddenly, he bumps into a hooded man, who says it's nothing but then stops mid-sentence when he notices something. The hooded man senses that the energy coming from Derek is the same one he's been tracking. Derek asks who the man is and assumes he might be another noble from the region. The man then accuses him of being what he's been tracking, asking if Derek is a void beast. The protagonist denies it, and the man asks why he can feel the void's energy in him. Not wanting to cause more trouble, Derek pretends not to understand and says he doesn't know what the man is talking about. The man then starts interrogating him, firing off several questions about his origin and level. He says he thinks Derek is lying and tries to touch him, but Derek grabs his hand tightly. He asks what the man would do if he were lying, and the stranger activates a skill. The identification skill fails instantly, leaving both of them surprised by the result. With the situation settled, Derek asks if he can finally drink his beer in peace. The bartender recognizes him, saying he's heard plenty about Derek around the village. Then the hunter leaves, thinking he needs to warn someone named Stella about Derek. Derek orders a beer, and the bartender Bart introduces himself while serving the drink. He watches the man leave, relieved that the problem is gone but feeling it was a close call. Out of money, Derek offers a monster hide as payment, which makes Bart visibly excited. Suddenly, Brandy's mother approaches while Bart offers Derek a room on the house. But Brandy's mother interrupts, explaining that her daughter asked for him to stay at their home as payment. With a smile, the woman adds that she's already preparing a stew for dinner. The two walk through the village, Derek carrying the beers he got from the bar. She asks what the hunter wanted with him, but Derek immediately dodges the question. She warns him to be careful since that man works for the crown. The warrior takes a sip, asking if she means the kingdom, but she shakes her head. She explains that the crown is a powerful organization not tied to the government. In fact, it's a restaurant, but one with massive influence throughout the entire realm. The woman finishes by saying that only the wealthiest and most powerful can dine there. She continues, explaining that their most prized delicacy is just one thing. It's the meat of the void beast, which makes Derek so shocked he spits out his beer. The woman explains that if prepared properly, the meat grants incredible bonuses to those who eat it. He doubts it, saying there must be weaker void beasts and not all of them are legendary. But she insists that even the weakest can destroy a village and that they're extremely rare to find. With a serious look, she stares at him and says she's sure he already knew all this. He simply nods, and they continue walking in silence back to her house. Later that night, Derek tries the stew and is surprised by how good it tastes. He compliments it, saying it's the best thing he's eaten in years, which makes the woman flustered. Thomas's grandfather agrees but gets scolded by his wife for nearly comparing her cooking to Brandy's mother's. Then Thomas excitedly asks if he's really going to unlock his system the next day. Derek confirms, saying yes if his grandparents agree with the plan. The grandfather agrees immediately, saying it would be cruel to deny it after the boy's long wait. The boy cheers with his arms in the air, overjoyed by the news. But Derek interrupts, saying there's one more condition before anything happens. He says it's been a long time since he's had a hot bath, and Thomas gets the message. The boy runs off excitedly, shouting that he's going to heat the water right away. Thomas's grandmother laughs and his grandfather chuckles, saying the boy has only one thing on his mind lately. Lost in thought, Derek feels a tap on his shoulder and turns to see who called him. It's Brandy, who hands him a gift, saying she made it to thank him. She explains that after burying her father, she felt lost, but working helped her move forward. Smiling, he accepts the gift and thanks Brandy for her kind gesture. Suddenly, Thomas yells that he needs more firewood, and the family continues chatting. Derek watches the scene, feeling that for the first time in a long while, he isn't alone. The warrior realizes he's finally escaped the void as he hears the boy complain about the bath. The next day, Derek runs with the boy on his back, leaping around and having fun. With one final jump, he stops in an open field, saying it's a good spot to start. He calls the boy, who's a bit dizzy from the run, and asks if he's ready. With a wide grin, Thomas shouts yes, completely thrilled about the moment. Derek then hands him a knife, warning him to be careful not to cut himself. He pulls the squirrel from his bag and tells the boy to kill the creature without hesitation. With one swift strike, the boy kills it instantly, determined to finally gain his system. A blue energy surrounds his body, and the system announces that Thomas has awakened. Derek asks how he feels, looking at him with satisfaction. Thomas wonders how he could have killed a level 50 creature, and Derek explains that the knife was forged by the same blacksmith who made his weapon. But before continuing, Derek says there's something very important he needs to ask the boy. He reminds Thomas that he wants to leave the village, and to do that he'll need to get stronger. Remembering his own time spent alone, he says he can't stand the solitude of the void anymore. Then he invites Thomas to travel with him, leaving the boy completely stunned by the offer. The boy gets excited, asking if he's serious and what his grandparents will think. Flustered, the boy coughs and says he doesn't see a problem, accepting Derek's invitation. With everything settled, Derek says there are a few conditions, and the first is to keep his secrets. The boy takes it seriously and swears to protect them with his life, though Derek finds that a bit dramatic. The second condition is that Derek will protect him, but the boy has to train to stand on his own. The final rule is that if Derek gives an order, the boy must obey without question. He explains that he's not evil, but he's not a good guy either, and that there's always a reason behind what he does. Punching the air, the boy shouts that he wants to travel with him, and accepts every condition. Derek then shakes his hand, congratulating him and officially welcoming him to the team. Lying in the grass, Derek asks how many skill points the boy got from awakening, and Thomas says 3. He tells the boy he'll only keep 1 point, leaving Thomas panicked by the command. Without arguing, the boy obeys and spends his points on meditation and identification. Derek reassures him, explaining that those are the most powerful skills he can have right now. Then he says the last point can go to something more fun and asks what the boy wants. The boy yells that he wants to be fast, to strike before enemies can even see him. With his decision made, the boy spends his last point, putting everything into vitality and stamina. He tries to ask for a ride back, but Derek runs ahead without even waiting. The warrior shouts that it's a race and that the boy's already losing, leaving him behind. The scene shifts to a room where everyone is gathered, discussing something serious. With a sigh, Derek says that they'll all probably die. Raina questions whether he's saying that even silver rank adventurers at level 50 couldn't handle the dungeon. He reveals that he found the dungeon in the forest, and it was level 100. Everyone is stunned by the news, and Chief Leon realizes they'll need more help. He says they'll need gold rank adventurers, and Thomas's grandfather immediately agrees. Derek then asks for a map of the area, and the grandfather tells Thomas to fetch it from the drawer. With the map on the table, Raina explains that the red X's mark the known dungeons. Derek points at a spot on the map, saying the new dungeon should be somewhere around there. He asks permission to mark it, and Thomas's grandfather agrees without hesitation. After marking it, he asks if he can make a copy, and the old man allows it. He hands the copy to Raina and takes the chance to ask her something directly, why she's still level 31. Annoyed, she shouts if he used identification on her, but he reminds her she did the same to him. She explains that her class Stormblade is rare and takes much longer to level up. She adds that the local monsters give no experience, and that as the village leader she simply has no time to train. To make things worse, she says the village weapons can't withstand fights against high-level creatures. Suddenly, Derek tosses her a sword, leaving her completely confused. He explains that it's a gift and invites her to train with him and Thomas the next day. With a grin, he says if she shows up, the sword is hers, and then asks if she can use magic. She confirms she can, but still can't believe he'd give away a weapon that must be worth a fortune. With a determined look, she nods and says she'll join the training. Excited, he says goodbye, telling them he'll see them tomorrow, since he's heading to meet his friend Bart. The scene shifts to Wallace, who's shouting at his father, demanding reinforcements for his revenge. His father questions him, asking if he's really stooping so low as to intimidate a small village. He reveals that he's heard the village requested help from a silver rank adventurer team. Angry, the father orders Wallace to go back and handle the mess he should have dealt with himself. Wallace tries to argue, but his father refuses to hear excuses. Furious, the older man stands up and yells for him to shut up and obey his command. Shaking with rage, the noble turns around and leaves his father's chamber. He accepts the order but vows to take care of them in his own way. The scene cuts to the next day, where Raina asks Derek if he's really sure about this. He spreads his arms and says yes, telling her to attack with everything she's got. With a confident grin, Derek says she should trust him, then jokes that he'd rather ruin his old shorts than tear another shirt. She accepts and prepares, surrounding her sword with bright blue energy. Even so, she decides to hold back a little, not wanting to hurt him. Her slash of energy flies toward him at full speed, and Derek gets ready to dodge. Watching the scene, Thomas panics, wondering if this is really just a training session. Derek takes the hit head-on, leaving everyone speechless. He praises the strike and tells her not to hold back next time, making Raina turn serious. She agrees and charges again with a strike even stronger than before. 10 minutes later, she's exhausted and out of mana, and he tells her to meditate to recover. While Raina meditates, Derek turns and calls for Thomas to begin his training. The boy answers awkwardly, dropping the practice swords out of sheer nervousness. Derek tells him it's his turn now, and orders him to pick a weapon and try to kill him. Thomas freezes, stunned, asking if he really just told him to kill him, unable to believe what he heard. With a sigh, Derek reminds him that he took 30 hits and asks if the boy really thinks he can hurt him. With a determined look, the boy understands the message and agrees to try to kill him. He grabs a weapon and leaps to attack, while Derek taunts him to come at full strength. With a shout, the boy swings, but Derek easily dodges the strike. The attack misses badly, and Thomas ends up beside him in an awkward position. They both freeze for a moment, with the boy unable to understand how he missed a stationary target. Derek mocks him for missing something that wasn't even moving, and Thomas apologizes, embarrassed. But Derek tells him not to apologize, to get better, and the boy misses again. Out of patience, Derek suggests he try another weapon, but Thomas complains that he wants to use daggers. Derek reminds him of their deal, and orders him to obey, telling him to try a spear this time. And so the days pass, with Raina leveling up her skill while Derek improves his magic resistance. Meanwhile, Thomas continues to struggle a lot with using daggers. But with a sword or spear, his talent becomes genuinely impressive to watch. Between training sessions, Derek hunts beasts for Brandy to practice crafting, and for Thomas to gain experience. At night, they return to the village and share dinner together. Thomas's grandfather asks Derek to go easy on the boy, explaining that his father also used daggers. Then Thomas calls Brandy to watch him train, boasting that he's getting really good. With a sad look, the grandfather reveals that the boy only wants to be like his father. Time passes, and Derek announces that Thomas reached level 10 and can now choose a class. He advises the boy to be smart and pick the best class, not just the coolest one. With a focused look, Thomas agrees and sits down to open his system menu. Derek silently hopes the system gives him great options, because the kid deserves them. With determination, Thomas reaches out, finally deciding which class to choose. A green light bursts out, and Derek is surprised he chose so quickly. Smiling, the boy says he didn't need help. He already knew the perfect choice. Derek is stunned when Thomas reveals he picked Rogue, the same class as his father. He asks if there wasn't anything better, and accuses him of choosing just to imitate his dad. Embarrassed, the boy admits that yes, the system offered much rarer options. He explains that he just remembered how cool his father was, and got carried away, but Derek cuts him off coldly, saying his father is dead, and that Thomas is terrible with daggers. He questions his decision to take the boy along, realizing he'd forgotten how young he really was. Desperate, Thomas grabs his leg, begging to go with him so he can become strong. Derek asks how he can trust him when he doesn't obey or keep secrets. Crying, the boy swears an oath to the great system to protect Derek's secrets. A notification appears, declaring that the oath is lifelong, leaving Derek surprised. He asks why the boy did something so reckless, and Thomas says it's because he wants to follow him. Derek accepts, but warns that this is his last chance, and says they'll return to prepare things. The scene cuts to a group in a carriage, returning to Raina's village. A noblewoman complains, asking if they really need to go back to that filthy village. Another adventurer grumbles that he still couldn't get the smell of it out of his hair from last time. A different noble mocks them, hoping the reception will be better this time since it wasn't before. One of the guards stays silent, visibly tense amid all the pointless chatter. Suddenly, Wallace snaps and orders everyone to shut up at once. He tells them to stop whining because in a few days, all of this will finally be over. The scene shifts to Derek and Thomas approaching the entrance of a dungeon in the forest. Derek thinks they can clear it a few times to give the boy more experience, but Thomas, confused, asks why they're back there again. Smirking, Derek reminds him he already said why, because they're going to clear the dungeon. Panicking, the boy asks how he's supposed to enter when the max level is 25. Derek grins and says the boy is about to see his first secret. A system window appears showing the dungeon's status and revealing that Derek is actually level 18. Completely shocked, Thomas yells in disbelief that Derek is only level 18. Then he suddenly realizes what that really means for them. Excited, he understands that with Derek's strength, they can farm every low-level dungeon. With a wicked smile, Derek asks who said he was going to fight. He's just going to watch. He pushes Thomas forward, saying there's no better training than fighting for survival. The countdown ends, and both are sucked into the dungeon in a flash of light. They arrive in a cavern that looks like a jungle filled with birds and exotic plants. A toucan watches from above as Derek turns to the boy and asks if he's ready. But the boy, trembling, asks if Derek is sure about this, gripping his arm tightly. Derek reassures him, reminding him that he has high-level daggers and Brandy's armor to protect him. He jokes that the boy has enough vitality to take a few hits, and that he still needs to level his healing skill. Swallowing hard, the boy nods with his dagger in hand, admitting it's a win-win situation either way. As they walk, small creatures can be seen moving around them. The scene shifts, showing how Thomas is handling the monsters. A giant mosquito attacks, and the boy screams for help. Then a massive beetle starts chasing him, making him run and yell through the forest. To make matters worse, a centipede grabs him, squeezing tight and nearly crushing the air out of his lungs. Next, a giant ant tries to stomp him flat, leaving him completely terrified and screaming for Derek. Derek suddenly appears and slices the creature clean in half, saving the boy at the last second. Collapsed on the ground, Thomas catches his breath and asks which part of that was supposed to be fun. Derek walks up and tells him to relax. He's still alive after all, prompting the boy to ask what's wrong with him. He asks to see Thomas's arm, and the boy yells in pain, convinced it's broken. Using his healing skill, Derek fixes the injury, and the boy immediately feels much better. With a pat on the shoulder, Derek tells him to get back into the fight. The dungeon won't clear itself. He encourages the boy, who prepares to battle again, but can't shake the feeling that something's seriously wrong with Derek. Suddenly a giant beetle appears, and Thomas steels himself, muttering that he can handle it. Without hesitation, he charges at the monster, which notices the attack coming, but his strike misses badly, and Derek groans in disbelief and frustration. The creature retaliates instantly, sending the boy flying with a single hit. The giant beetle screeches, and Thomas thinks this might be the end for him, but Derek yells for him to dodge, and the boy rolls away just in time. Panting, he stands up, and Derek cheers, shouting that he did great. The creature doesn't wait. It charges forward, ready to crush the boy against the ground. It slams him into a tree, and despite the pain, he realizes Brandy's armor is holding up. Even as the armor cracks, he thanks his friend silently and insists he can still fight. With a swift slash, he hits the monster's leg, making it shriek in pain. He takes advantage of the moment and drives his dagger deep into its weak spot. Once the monster falls, Derek tells him it wasn't perfect, but at least he's improving, helping the boy up. Derek asks what he thinks his first mistake in that fight was. Thomas guesses it was putting too much strength into his swing, which threw off his balance. But Derek shakes his head, saying he was wrong before he even reached the beetle. He asks why Thomas didn't use his stealth skill, leaving the boy stunned. Frozen, Thomas tries to process what Derek just said. Embarrassed, the boy admits the reason is simple. He forgot he even had the skill. Outraged, Derek asks if he really forgot the only skill of the class he picked against his advice. Thomas nods, and Derek mutters to himself that the kid is unbelievably dumb. The scene cuts to the village, where a carriage rushes in and screeches to a stop at the gate. A guard on the wall yells down, demanding to know who's arriving without announcing themselves. Suddenly, the wall is struck, exploding under the force of an attack. The villagers panic, not understanding why the same adventurers have returned. But Wallace smirks and tells them not to worry. The city lord heard their request for help. With mock sympathy, he announces that they're there to save them. Raina prepares to fight, saying that if this is the kind of help they offer, wrapped in energy, she warns that they want nothing from that group. With fury in her eyes, she orders Wallace and his men to leave the village immediately, but the noble only grins with disdain, clearly enjoying himself. The scene shifts back to the dungeon, where a spider ant, level 18, appears before them. Now at level 17, Thomas dodges the attack smoothly, brimming with confidence. He claims he can handle it and charges forward, finishing the creature with a clean strike. He cheers in victory, but Derek yells for him to watch out for what's coming next. Another creature lunges, and Derek shouts for him not to lose focus in battle. Panicked, Thomas realizes his dagger is stuck and yells for help as the monster charges. A beam of purple energy suddenly slices the creature in half, saving the boy again. Collapsed on the ground, he laments that things were going so well and thinks a bigger weapon would have helped. He finally admits he's terrible with daggers, and as always, Derek was right. Derek heals him and tells him not to get discouraged. He's improved a lot since they started. With a serious look, Derek says he thinks the boy's ready, since they've cleared nearly everything inside. The two reach the boss chamber, and Derek reminds him of the plan: sneak close and strike the monster's head. With a thunderous noise, the boss room doors finally swing open before them. The boss charges out to attack, but Derek blocks the strike, shielding Thomas at the last second. Seeing the creature's massive size, the boy freezes in fear, doubting he can possibly kill it. Smirking, Derek says he's changed his mind. He'll hold the beast down so Thomas can finish it. Without hesitation, Derek rushes in, leaving the boy behind. He grabs the monster's arm with crushing strength, readying his counterattack. With a brutal motion, he slams the creature to the ground, shattering the floor beneath them. Holding it down, Derek shouts for Thomas that the rest is up to him. The opening is there. With determination in his eyes, the boy nods and readies his final strike. Without wasting a second, he runs forward and drives his dagger deep into the creature's weak point. The monster disintegrates into light, and the system announces the dungeon boss has been defeated. The boy cheers that he's cleared his first dungeon and can finally escape that nightmare. Derek congratulates him but warns that from now on, things will only get harder. He says he wanted to run one more dungeon, but the boy was slower than he expected. They exchange a silent look before Derek asks why the boy is still standing there. Thomas explains the dagger got stuck and angrily kicks the monster's body to free it. The system then delivers the rewards: a healing skill and a dungeon achievement coin. With everything done, Derek asks if he's ready to head back, and they both leave the dungeon. On the way, Derek says he understands now, and Thomas promises to change class at level 25. Derek agrees, saying that's good, he has a great spear waiting for him, since the previous owner won't need it anymore. But as they near the village, Derek grows serious. It's strange that no one's at the gate. Then he realizes what's happening, and an explosion confirms his fears. Without a second thought, he dashes into the burning village, shouting for Raina and another woman. He finds Brandy and her mother on the ground, one of them critically wounded, with only 13 minutes left to live. Thomas arrives, panicked, shouting and asking Derek what the hell is going on. Using his healing skill, Derek stabilizes them both, saying they'll live. He's healed the worst of it. He then tells Thomas to stay put, but the boy, crying, asks where he's going. With a dark look, Derek says he's going to find whoever did this, his aura flaring with power. The scene cuts to Wallace, threatening Raina and blaming her for everything. For the crime of disobedience, the noble sentences her to death before all his men. Without hesitation, one of Wallace's soldiers raises his sword, ready to strike the final blow. But Derek suddenly appears, reminding him of the warning he gave the last time they met. Wreathed in void energy, he finishes the threat. This time he's going to kill him. Terrified, Wallace screams for his men to attack and kill Derek immediately. One of the female adventurers charges, shouting for him to die, but Derek doesn't even flinch. With a single merciless strike, he knocks her unconscious on the spot. Her body hits the ground, and another woman cries out in horror. Furious, she screams that he'll pay for that, gathering blazing fire energy in her hands. She unleashes a massive burst, shouting that she'll burn him to ashes right now. The explosion is enormous, engulfing the street and filling it with smoke and flames. Panting, the woman says she did it for her sister, while Wallace watches the destruction. But through the fire, two glowing purple eyes pierce the smoke. Her attack failed. Derek steps out of the inferno without a single scratch, leaving her frozen in terror. Enraged, Wallace yells at his men, calling them idiots and ordering them to kill Derek already. An arrow flies toward Derek, but he casually catches it mid-air without even trying. The archer, the same one from before, panics as he realizes history is repeating itself. He tries to flee, swearing he won't die for Wallace, but is struck by his own arrow mid-run. His body falls lifeless from the rooftop, shocking everyone watching the fight. Amid the chaos, Thomas's grandfather pushes through the crowd, shouting for Derek and demanding people move aside. He runs up, begging Derek to stop, saying they're nobles. But with a cold stare, Derek replies there's no turning back. They already had their chance. His eyes gleam with energy as he says their chance ended a long time ago. Another adventurer charges, but Derek blocks the man's sword with just 2 fingers. The man stares in disbelief as his blade cracks apart, unable to comprehend it. With the fighter defeated, Derek walks slowly toward Wallace. The noble, furious, screams that all his men are useless. Then he releases his own aura, vowing to show them what true noble blood means. Wallace is enveloped in blue energy, boasting about his power and his lineage, but Derek only smirks in disdain, channeling the void to end the fight for good. Their auras collide in a massive explosion that tears through the village. Amid the blinding light, Derek grabs Wallace by the throat. Gasping for air, the noble begs for his life, promising to leave and never return. With a dark glare, Derek simply nods and says that Wallace is right, he'll never see him again. Without mercy, he tightens his grip as Wallace makes one last desperate plea for his life. Suddenly, one of the noblewomen seizes Thomas's grandfather as a hostage, shouting for Derek to release Wallace immediately. The old man begs Derek to listen, warning that killing nobles isn't worth what it will cost them. He explains that the punishment for slaying nobility is severe, but Derek remains silent. The noblewoman takes advantage of it, yelling for him to obey and calling him a dog with scorn. Panicking, the old man repeats that if Derek kills Wallace, the entire village could be condemned. But then a sword pierces through the noblewoman's chest, and its wielder, smiling grimly, tells them to take their chances. It's Chief Leon, who declares that a true leader protects his people at any cost. With the woman down, Derek turns his full attention back to Wallace, who trembles in terror. He asks if the noble swears there will be no retaliation against the village if he lets him go. Terrified, Wallace nods frantically, swearing he'll do nothing and begging to be released. But with a sharp crack, Derek snaps the noble's neck, and Thomas's grandfather realizes he's doomed them all. Derek tosses the body aside, mocking that it was an accident. His hand slipped. Nearby, Raina lies on the ground, injured but no longer in immediate danger. Derek approaches carefully and lifts her into his arms. He carries her through the stunned crowd, while Leon orders the old man to stand up. The villagers watch in silence as Derek takes Raina into her home. Then Chief Leon shouts for everyone to stop staring and start cleaning up the village. Inspired, the people begin organizing to put out the fires and restore order. The scene shifts to Raina's house, where Derek lays her gently on the bed to rest. He sits beside her to keep watch, but a sudden system alert draws his attention. Several windows appear, and he groans that his plan to farm dungeons with Thomas is officially ruined. He thinks to himself that he must be the only person angry about leveling up, but then Raina calls out weakly. Worried, she asks if the village is safe, and Derek reassures her that it is. Relieved, she thanks him and he jokes that the nobles just died on their own, but she grabs his arm, warning him that it's serious. If anyone learns what really happened, they'll all be in danger. With confident eyes, he replies that then they'll simply make sure no one finds out. He says he already has a plan. All she has to do is make sure everyone keeps quiet. Chief Leon enters with the others, telling everyone to come inside. They need to start planning. He reports that the nobles' bodies are already hidden, and that the carriage drivers have sworn secrecy. Derek thanks him and says he'll store the corpses in his dimensional bracelet. Thomas's grandfather asks what they're going to do, admitting he can't see any way out of this mess. Solemnly, he laments that Derek didn't spare the noble, but Derek calmly reassures him. Standing tall, the warrior declares that he has a plan, though he can't do it alone. He explains that he'll need help from everyone in the room for it to work. Then he corrects himself. He'll need the help of the entire village. He asks how much time they have, and Thomas's grandfather estimates anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. Pensive, Derek decides they'll just have to hope it's the latter. He begins laying out the plan. First, gather the villagers so everyone understands what's at stake. The story they'll tell is that the nobles took the map from the old man and went straight to the dungeon. Everyone must stick to that version, that the nobles barely stayed in the village at all. Derek apologizes to the old man for losing the map, but he says it's for a greater cause. Then Derek explains the second phase. He needs a system oath from everyone in the room. Chief Leon looks confused, asking why they need to make such an oath. Derek clarifies it's the same one Thomas made, to keep his secrets forever. But Leon refuses, saying he's seen what secrets can do and won't take that kind of vow. Thomas's grandfather also hesitates, saying he'd rather not swear, but will if absolutely necessary. From her bed, Raina asks if he'll keep the village safe if she takes the oath. He promises to do his best, and with that she agrees to make the pact. Brandy's mother says she doesn't need an oath to trust him, but will take one if he asks. Excited, Brandy declares that she'll do it too if Thomas made the oath, so can she. Smiling, Derek thanks the three of them for their trust and support. He turns to the other two, thanking them as well and inviting them to stay and listen. A blue light glows as the system confirms the oaths, binding until death. Feeling stronger, Raina sits up and asks what his grand plan actually is. Grinning, Derek says he's glad she asked, and begins telling the cover story. According to the tale, Wallace graciously received the map from Thomas's grandfather. With the map, the noble led his team to the dangerous level 100 dungeon in the forest. Thanks to their efforts, the dungeon's break was contained, stopping the spreading corruption. Unfortunately, the team was annihilated, and Wallace suffered a fatal wound from the final boss. He barely escaped, but bled out before anyone could help him. Thus, Wallace made the ultimate sacrifice, dying a hero, or at least that's what they'll believe. Everyone in the room stands speechless, completely stunned by Derek's audacious plan, and that's where we'll wrap it up for today. Don't forget to leave a like and comment part 2 if you want to see the story continue. That way we'll know you enjoyed it. See you in the next video. Until then,